Hello, everybody. I'm Andrew Lamb, owner of Four Leaf Performance, and I want to extend a warm welcome to you all today in today's discussion, Best Employment Practices, how to hire the right people for your business. I'm thrilled to have Des Ryan here to talk with us today about this particular topic. Des has got many, many years of executive leadership in Europe, and has hired many, many people, and now does this for many organizations out there in leading their businesses. So has got a huge amount of expertise, and undoubtedly will enrich our conversation today. So as a business coach, we've noticed many of our clients ask us, how do we hire the right people? How do we know that we've got the right people in the right seats? So that's what we're going to discuss today. So, morning, Des. How are we doing?
Andrew, I'm very well. A little bit cold, but apart from that, I'm delighted to be on the call with you today.
Awesome. So let's dig into this topic. I know everybody's looking forward to this. So we're going to talk about the core competencies and cultural fit. So my first question to you today, how do you identify the key competencies required for a role, and what strategies do you recommend for assessing these during an interview?
Okay, so I think looking at key competencies, I want to start even before the interview, to be honest with you, because there's a couple of key questions to identify before you get into that. Is it a new role? Is it a replacement role? Have you got any past experience to judge what type of individual you're looking to join the business? What type of competencies you're looking for? So it's obviously easier if it's a replacement because you've got a bit of history there. The other thing I want to look at really would be like, how good were the job specifications? Like, are the roles and the responsibilities really, really clear before we sit down with someone to talk about the job that we're looking for them to do? After that, it's down to asking the right competency-based questions. So again, have you got a list of questions that are going to give you the right information? Or have you just randomly picked some questions which you've used in the past? So again, I think it's about the quality of the questions you ask will give you the quality of the answers that you're looking for. And I suppose, what kind of performance indicators are you looking to, measure? And what kind of competencies are you looking to really explore during the interview process? So lots of things to consider there when you're looking at competencies, because they cover like such a vast array of areas for people coming in and sitting in an interview process.
Awesome. So let's dig a little deeper in that. Could you describe how to effectively balance between evaluating hard skills and soft skills in candidates?
Okay. So look, both are obviously very important. So the hard skills definitely will come to bear fruit at a later stage, but I think initially it's the soft skills are really, really important to identify at an interview stage. And there are some techniques for assessing soft skills. There's some really kind of techniques around like putting real life situations and real life scenarios into the questions. I also look at like past experiences, like how good are they at handling conflict, for example? How good are they at managing relationships with people, people above and below them? So managing upwards and downwards. All that's kind of the soft skills that I would look for more in an interview process with a candidate at initial stage. Certainly depends on what part of the process we're in, of course, because the deeper you go into the process, the more in-depth the questions are going to be coming anyway.
Right. Okay. So based upon that, in what ways can technology be leveraged to enhance the accuracy of competency assessments and interviews?
Oh God, where do we start with technology, certainly AI is going to be playing a big role. And interestingly, I was talking to a guy earlier this morning, and he was talking about VR, virtual reality, and how that is going to change how we engage with people, and how we could physically put someone in, not physically, but virtually put someone into an interview room with people, with a panel, for example, and it's a person sitting on their own at home or sitting in an interview pod, suddenly surrounded by 3 or 4 people virtually. So I think AI and the use of algorithms, digital assessment tools, there's lots of them out there which can be used now. And data, like we talk about data a lot in business, but certainly the use of data to make decisions on recruiting people, like we can't ignore it. There's lots of assessment tools out there, whether it's DISC or it's Myers-Briggs or it is the Why Discoveries. There's so much information out there. There's so much data we can gather before we make a decision. So I just think that let's use it as much as we can to help us make the right decisions.
Awesome, thank you. Let's dig in a little bit different question. So, in your opinion, how critical is assessing a candidate's alignment with the company's culture, and what methods can be employed to evaluate this effectively?
How long have we got?
I know that this topic could go on for hours, right?
Oh, this is a really, really important one for me, because for me it's all about fit. I love talking culture and I love talking values with companies who are in the middle of their recruitment process or starting their recruitment process, because if you're not putting those values and your culture front of house at the very, very start, and what I advise people to do is send your candidates your core values. Send your candidates what your culture is, your core points of culture. So let them know in advance that they're important to you, and then ask them about them during the interview process. You've seen our core values, you've seen our points of culture. What's your favorite ones? You know, it shows a couple of things. It shows, number one, that actually they've done a little bit of homework before they've come into you and looked at the information you've sent them, which says a lot anyway. But then it also gets them to select some of the core values, and not only just pick a core value, but why. Why is that core value resonate with you, and why is that core value important to you? And I think, for me, at that early stage, it is always about, and I think you mentioned it at the very, very start, it's about getting the right seats, getting the right people on the right seats.
Right.
If you don't have a strong culture in the first place, or if your team aren't aware of what that culture is, then that's going to show up in the people that are in your business already, but certainly the people that you bring into your business. Because where we generally fall down with people is where they do stuff that's at odds with our values. So if people know that trust is really, really important to you and someone breaks your trust, maybe they weren't aware that it was that important to you in the first place.
Yeah, being able for that individual to see the business through the eyes of the business, right? You just mentioned trust there. If trust is a big deal and they don't see trust, they don't see the world through those eyes, they're going to miss that, right? So they're not going to be able to see that element of the business and why it's so important.
Absolutely. And I think, again, there's so many core values that are shared, I suppose, among so many businesses. But you mentioned trust is one of the most important ones. Loyalty is another really important one. Strong communication is always a really good value to have in your business. But you might bring someone in who struggles with communication, and may, as a result of that, struggle within an organization that values communication from the very, very start. So
can you provide examples of subtle indicators that might reveal a candidate's true alignment or misalignment with a company's culture?
Yeah, another great question. So again, it's the non-verbal cues that sometimes we look for. It could be a shift in someone's body language. It could be their tone or their pace changes. And I mean that from a positive, by the way. So I'm looking for, when someone's excited about something, you can tell that they're excited because again their pace changes or their tone changes or they perk up or they sit up in a chair and you can see how much it means to them. And I think small little things like that tend to give you the best kind of assessment of whether someone is aligned or not. And again, sometimes you get people whose glass is half empty rather than half full. And I think sometimes that will come across because you need to make sure that you, as you said there in the question, like how aligned are they to your culture? I suppose the first part of that is that they need to you need to make sure that your culture is there, that it is very obvious and very prevalent even before that candidate comes into the room. And the last thing really in relation to responses, like again, there has to be consistency, so you got to get a consistency in how they come across and how they answer various questions. And it should just flow in one direction and shouldn't leave you in a position where you're questioning, was that a genuine response or not? So.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. Can you suggest some effective methods or tools that can help business owners determine whether a candidate's a good fit for the company?
So, look, again, technology has really gone so far as like there's assessment tools out there which we can use to assess someone's fit. Yeah. And I've mentioned a couple of them. DISC is something that I'm very much aware of. The why discovery, again, it's something which assesses people from the early stage as to why they do stuff and how they do it, and ultimately what they bring to an organization. So again, use the tools that are available. Reference checks. Again, the amount of people who don't do reference checks, even though there is a name there, and sometimes it's maybe the lack of information you get from a reference check is going to tell you, read between the lines, sometimes they tell you to do. You can always offer trial periods and internships to assess their fit, but also it gives them the opportunity to assess your fit. Does your opportunity currently fit their plan or their roadmap? And maybe it doesn't. Another thing that I like to do is involve the team in the recruitment process, like panel interviews. And at the end of the day, your team are sometimes the hidden treasure of information. They know the ins and outs of working in the business, and are often the best placed to identify who would be a good fit and who may not be the right fit. And ultimately, they're the ones who are going to be working shoulder to shoulder with them anyway. So why not make sure that they're involved in the process at the start?
So how do you measure the long-term impact of a candidate's fit on team dynamics and company's performance?
So again, I think you kind of covered that a little bit with the previous one, but I think you're going to get team feedback. Involve your team from the start and get their feedback. I always like to buddy people up as well. So buddy up new people with your new team when they come into the business. Because again, great experience and a great form of feedback comes from them. There's obviously going to be KPIs and performance metrics. That's going to be how we're going to manage them. And I suppose another metric is your retention rates. Ideally, what you're looking for when a candidate joins your business, ideally what you're looking for is for that candidate to literally rip up their CV when they're employed by you because they found their home, and as much as you're looking for the right fit in a candidate, you got to make sure that your candidate has found their right fit. And as much as, yes, I know these questions are aimed about getting the right candidate, but it's equally important to see it from the side. Put your feet into their shoes, and make sure that, well, why would I come and work for you in the first place? And I think that's an equally important question. And sometimes the truth isn't particularly pleasant when you challenge business owners with that. Is that you're looking for the right candidate, and yet how do you know that you're the right option for these people coming into your business? Maybe your retention rates are telling you something that you don't want to know.
Right. Okay. Last question on this topic. What are the common pitfalls in assessing fit, and how could these be avoided?
Yeah. Again, I suppose I'm going to say that I'm slightly biased in this, but actually, bias in an assessment can be dangerous. Because sometimes we do put an overemphasis on people's fit in the business. And yet I would have the opinion that, if you get the right person, you can train them to do the job instead of getting someone with the best CV and not being a good fit. But definitely one of the pitfalls is an overemphasis on the right fit. And you get the right person and then you can't train them, or they end up not being competent in other areas. And that could cause problems down the road. So again, I suppose it's about trying to avoid biases and trying not to overemphasize the whole fit process. And I think another way of making sure that you avoid pitfalls such as, I suppose you need a diverse panel. So you need to have a diverse interviewing panel. Not that you're relying on one person or one position to recruit all of your team. Because again, diversity, equality in the workplace is becoming so important right now, and the inclusion side of it. So it's vitally important that we avoid that at the initial interview stage. So
Awesome. All right. Let's start talking about advanced interview techniques and strategies. So, Des, in your opinion, what are the top techniques for conducting a comprehensive evaluation of a candidate's potential beyond just their technical skills?
Okay, so again, let's talk about behavioral interviews. So again, interviewing people based on behavioral techniques, not just their potential skills and technical skills. So again, it's that whole, we touched on in our previous question, that whole soft skill assessment. How do we assess their ability to work with people and solve problems and that type of stuff, which is equally important. And I suppose, again, look at the potential for growth within the business. And look also at not just the potential for growth, but their own eagerness and enthusiasm to grow within the business. I think that's equally important as the technical side and the technical skills that they might bring to the business.
Yeah. One of the things that I look at is when I'm doing hiring is you're not hiring for the current role, you're hiring for the next role. So you're looking for that, as you said, that potential, that ability to grow. We want to be making sure as we're hiring new talent in, that talent is not a stagnant talent. That talent has the ability to grow and develop, as you said earlier, into the next role. So don't hire just for that role, hire for the next role after that. Can they drive to that level, right?
Yeah, I absolutely. And there's a can, but there's also an appetite to actually do it. So someone's ability is great and you might see the potential, but unless that person has the appetite to actually move to the next level or grow within the business, then you could you could end up with someone who's very technically aware, but with no passion or no particular need or want to move anywhere else to grow within the business. So
Yeah, good point. Good point. All right, let's dig a little deeper. Can you discuss the role of a scenario-based questions in revealing a candidate's problem-solving and decision-making skills?
So look, I think we've all been there. We've all been to interviews where you are given scenarios, and you need to come up with answers. You need to think on your feet. A bit of analytical thinking, as they say. So look, I think it's a really good way of assessing how people will cope under or in certain situations. And I think, and I mentioned it again on a previous question around like real life problem solving. What experience have they had in solving similar problems in similar environments? And what was their success in doing so? What did they learn? Because I'm sure it hasn't always been wins for everybody and successes. I'm sure there's been lots of learnings, and I think they're nearly as important to help you making decisions. To make decisions in the future is to learn from any mistakes that you've made in the past. So, and again, I think that requires an honesty of people. And I think if that comes across in an interview, then I think you will appreciate that actually, you know what, honesty, it doesn't show up every day. So when it does show up, you really appreciate that it's there, you know.
Let's dig into another question. How can interviewers effectively minimize unconscious bias during the hiring process?
So, like, again, bias training is something which we don't do a hell of a lot of. But training yourself on not being biased will certainly help you in that situation. Having a diverse interview panel, again, stops there being biases at any stage of an interview process. And then having a structured interview process which everybody sticks to. So again, the end of that sentence is really important, because often we've got a process and we get people who will bypass the system and will take the shortcut because we're under pressure. Particularly recruiting for fast-paced, organizations with a high kind of turnover of people. Lots of shortcuts are taken, which leads to more stress and more retention and more turnover of people, and the need to recruit more people. So it's kind of this doom loop, as we'll call it. You're trying to take a shortcut, but it just leads to bigger problems in the past. So put a structure in place and stick to it.
Awesome. All right. Let's have a look at the next question. So, what questions would you recommend to assess a candidate's adaptability and potential for future growth within the company?
Okay, so a candidate's adaptability, flexibility, how they handle change, how they handle the pace of change, and a word that's used quite often actually is fluid. How fluid are they, and how do they move across and through various stages of the business? What kind of a mindset do they have? Do they have a growth mindset? Because too many people out there would have fixed mindsets, and who don't have an innovative kind of a mindset or a growth mindset. And sometimes that obviously is going to hold them back. Previous experience in past growth businesses would be a good indicator at this stage as well. So again, what can you demonstrate that you've achieved in a previous role that is going to benefit you and help you grow in this business and help you grow the business in the new role that you might be in?
So I get this question all the time. How can you differentiate between a candidate's genuine adaptability versus a rehearsed response? I know we get that all the time. So how would you coach on that?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's like everything else. The deeper you dig, the more you're going to uncover whether someone is giving you a rehearsed response or a genuine response. Like you're obviously going to look for consistency in the answers, because sometimes at a superficial level where there's a rehearsed response, you'll get inconsistencies in how they come across and how they answer. But there are lots of non-verbal clues as well. We've mentioned non-verbal clues and cues in a previous question. But people's body language, are they squirming? Are they confident? Are they sitting back? Are they, how do they react to certain questions? And again, that will come across in their behavior as much as anything else. So looking out for all those non-verbal cues are equally important to the actual responses that you get. But I'll go back to what I said at the start. Keep asking, keep digging. Tell me more about that. So tell me a little bit more about that. And the more you dig, the more genuine responses you're going to get from people.
So the suggestion here is become a coal miner. Dig, dig, dig.
Keep digging. Yeah. Or again, the great question, you know the old favorite, which is, well, why is that? And keep asking the why question until they tell you to stop asking it, and then you've got as far as you want to go.
Yes, use the 5 whys. Always a good methodology. Yeah. All right. Let's have a look. So you did mention earlier with regards to growth mindset. So let's just dig that a little bit. So what indicators do you look for to gauge a candidate's enthusiasm for continuous learning and development?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I mentioned the word excitement. I want to see that. You want to feel someone's excitement. You want to see the passion for learning that people have. A great question I love to ask people is, like, what was the last book that they read? Because again, it shows an enthusiasm towards learning and development. Like, someone who's never read a book isn't going to grow. And you can support them as much as you want to, or you can, and it may not. If someone doesn't want to learn, they won't learn. So it's good to identify, look, okay, it may not be a book, but maybe it's a podcast, or maybe it is an audio book, or it's a mindfulness or a positivity people that they follow on social media, or influencers that they follow, or but some sort of an example of how they can self-improve, how they feel they can get better in what they do. But also, I suppose, to have a look in, like, what kind of career development plans do they have? Or do they have a career development plan? Or is this just another job? So, again, that will come across in an interview. Like, where the old question is, where do you see yourself going in the future? Right.
Well, as you can see in the back of you, there's you've got a library there of stuff. So I think you're definitely one of those as a lifelong learner, right? You're always looking for new information, right?
My very first one, the first book on my shelf, Crowning the Customer by Fergal Quinn. The very first job that I had he was my very first boss, Fergal Quinn. And we both went through the Super Quinn system. What an amazing place to learn, and from a customer service point of view, I was talking to a guy today who was talking about CX, and I says, have you read Fergal Quinn's book? Go out and read it. It's incredible. So
I still use him to this day.
Why wouldn't you? Way ahead of his time. Way
ahead of his time. All right, let's get into let's change topic. What strategies do you suggest for making the interview process engaging and reflective of the company's values?
Okay, so again, a great question. And again, I'm going to go back to sharing stuff before the interview process. So share the core values, share the culture, get feedback from the candidate in relation to why the culture fits them. What is it they like about the core values? And and be as interactive as possible with your interviews. There's lots of techniques out there that you can do. Don't just have a standard interview process. Engage with some of your team. Get some feedback as you walk around the business. Interact with people. Do a bit like if you want to get the best people, then you got to have the right process to, again, convince them that they are making the right decision. It's not just about you. Have an honest discussion about the values of the company and why they're so important. And make sure that your candidates are engaged. Engage with them. And if there's something missing or the engagement is poor, then question what you're doing. That maybe it's something maybe it's the questions that you're asking, or maybe it's the environment that people are in that maybe they're not comfortable, or whatever. But assess, be quite critical, self-critical, and learn from all of the interviews that you do. What did you like best about that interview, and what can we do better the next time? So I think self-assessment would be good at that stage as well.
Okay. So following up on that, so how important is providing feedback to the candidates, and what is the effective way to do this without compromising the company's position?
Yeah, again, I think so important to give feedback, and the amount of people who hear nothing back is embarrassing from a business perspective, and we don't do ourselves any favors by not giving that feedback. People who turn up for interviews, and that's it. They don't know whether they've got the job. Did they do a good interview? Did they give a bad interview? Some businesses are quite good at it. Most businesses are really poor at it. So I think it's about giving feedback, but I suppose it's like everything else. It's got to be constructive. So let's give a bit of constructive criticism rather than negative feedback. And it is about, it's about sometimes balancing the honesty of a situation with a bit of diplomacy. Because let's be honest, not everyone who comes for an interview with you is going to be a fit. But at least do them they've turned up for you. They've taken the time out of their day, out of their calendar to at least turn up for you. I think the honest and the best thing to do is at least give them a bit of feedback. And hopefully, as you said, as I say, that can be as constructive as possible. Although in certain cases, as you know only too well, that can be quite difficult at times.
Yeah. I always like to remind people that potential candidates could be potential customers in the future. So how would you like to be treated, right? How you've got to be setting a good example. You've got to be sharing that, because what happens if they become a potential customer in the future? If they've had a negative experience, what's to say that individual being a customer in the future may just go, no, I had an interview with those people. They never got back to me. Why would I do business with them? So, kind of remind yourself that, every potential interviewee is a potential customer in the future. So treat them with respect, treat them with dignity, give them the feedback, constructive feedback, give them some areas maybe to improve on, right? For the next one, right? Add value to them. They've spent their time. It's valuable. So give them some value back, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think
awesome.
For a particularly negative experience for someone, and if you were to give them particularly negative feedback, you mentioned them becoming a customer, I'd be pretty sure that they'd never become your customer.
Right.
And they would probably tell a huge amount of people not to become your customers, because that's the way they treat you. So I think you need to be careful there. Yeah, so it's a good point.
Yeah. All right. My last question for today. In what ways can an interviewer effectively represent and communicate the employer brand during the interview process?
So I think, as I said, you are trying to make sure that the business, your company, your brand is shown at its absolute best, because again, the fit has to be both ways. So it's really, really important that you represent your brand fully and at all times. You need to be authentic. You need to be able to use examples and stories of why the brand is so important to you, and why the brand is growing, and why there needs to be an alignment with the company mission and vision. And again, if you've already shared the culture and the values, then all you're doing is continuing that journey, so people realize that this company is maybe a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, and that it's a company that I really want to be part of because they are speaking my language. They have values that I value. Their
Mm-hmm.
culture is somewhere that I believe that I can grow and thrive because there's a good fit. And that has to be from the interview stage, and it has to be from anyone who's in that position and interviewing someone. You are, and I suppose it goes back to what you said there around being potential customers. That's your brand.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So you could do some serious damage to your brand through neglecting, or what's the word I'm looking for? A poor interview process
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
goes way off track, and suddenly, you are discriminating someone, even if you didn't mean it. So you got to be careful because you are representing your brand at all stages.
Right. Well, Des, as always, I want to say thank you very much for sharing your invaluable insights. I think today we've navigated a number of different things through the hiring processes, trying to bring in the right people for the business and bringing them and them adding value to the business. So I appreciate you looking at that and help us, understand some of the evaluations that people need to do, how to look at it from a cultural fit perspective, and some of those advanced interview techniques. So thank you for doing that. The strategies and ideas shared here today are not just theoretical. Des and I use these every single day with our clients. They have significant impact on hiring decisions and the overall team dynamics. And remember, with team dynamics, that's a long-term impact rather than a short-term impact. So effectively, hiring is not just about filling a position. It's about building a cohesive, dynamic, and forward-thinking team. It's also a reflection of your company's values and critical components of your employer brand. So to everybody that's watched today's video, thank you for joining us. We hope this discussion has been insightful. It's given you a deeper understanding in the practical approaches to refine your hiring processes. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you want to see more of this content. Have a fantastic day, and Des, thanks again for your time today.
Thanks, Andrew. Great being with you. Take it easy. See you next time.
Take care. Bye.